Get ready for the Magic Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in. It is another edition of the Magic Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, where we are breaking down the biggest stories in high school athletics in District 4, right there in the Magic Valley in the great state of Idaho. We do this each and every week on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and Twitter account. Thanks for being with us live. If you're hanging out, you can also watch this Prepcast on replay at all three of those destinations anytime. And you can listen to the Magic Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, as well as wherever you download and subscribe to podcasts, Google, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, etc. My name is Brandon Baney. Let's bring in our Magic Valley resident and expert. It's Scott Burton. What's up, Scott?
Hey, good morning, Brandon. Bright and early on this Friday morning. And you said Stitcher? Is that what you said? Another media? See, I gotta get caught up with all this stuff that the kids are doing these days, because I'm still the old Facebook guy, you know. And I'm reluctant to close up my MySpace account, so I'm still learning all this stuff. But top of the morning to you.
Yes, Friday morning sunrise edition of the Magic Valley Prepcast, because, well, you have been busy every night. It's weird, huh? When you have district golf and tennis and track and field and softball and baseball all crammed into like 2 weeks, and then state championships for all those events are next week too. So this is like the 2 week like hell week kind of.
It really is. I mean, it's you tell yourself as an AD, it's like, I mean, you know how busy fall is, because I mean you've got volleyball and soccer and football and swimming and cross country and clogging and, you know, whatever else you got going on. I don't know, but they're all happening at the same time. So fall is like insanely busy. And then you get to winter and you're like, okay, hey, but it's a lot of nights in the winter. So you're, you know, girls basketball, boys basketball, wrestling. It's only 3, but it's like all the time. And then you're thinking springtime, relax. It's going to be great. It's not great at all. It's insane, because you're jamming all these district tournaments into this week. And then not to mention all the reschedules and schedules that you're doing at the beginning of the spring sports season. But, you know, this particular week, we have the 2-day tennis tournament, the 2-day track tournament, baseball, softball, trying to squeeze all this stuff in before graduation happens. So, yeah, it is insanely busy right now. And so it works for us because, you know, we can just kind of go over some brackets and kind of highlight a couple things here and there. And every once in a while, we get a cool story that falls in our lap that we'll talk about today. But it is nuts. And then next week, I mean, it's state. And so we'll do our preview show in lieu of podcasts and go hit the state tournament route and try to knock those out and then breathe.
And then we will be back for our big spring sports championship extravaganza that's going to run long. I just know it is, because we got to highlight all the champions and everything. And then that's going to be that's in 2 weeks, Scott. You got 2 weeks to prepare for that.
All right.
That's after all the state events. So,
okay, cool.
Yes. It's become an annual tradition. I don't know if it still is. I usually do that show from Montana, because I've always just been like, okay, school year's over, spring sports are done. I'm traveling to see family and stuff. So we'll see if that happens again this year or not.
Yeah. There's always something. You know, we even talked about it a couple days ago. We need, since we're doing this stuff live, we need to come on at 3 a.m. one time.
It would be interesting.
And just see what happens. Just see what happens. I cannot be responsible for anything that might be going on at 3 a.m, but I tell you what, it might be good viewing. Be something to talk about.
It would be unique. That is for sure. All right. So we let off the show. You were talking about Stitcher, which is just a podcast app. It's not like anything too intensive. It's just a place where you can download and listen to your favorite podcast. But you mentioned MySpace, and they got me thinking, Scott, what's MySpace famous for? The top 6, right? Your 6 friends at the top of the list, right? You were limited to 6 on the page on MySpace. The younger people are going to have no idea what we're talking about, but top 6 then got me thinking. Last week we had the spotlight on 6 incredible track and field athletes from Lighthouse Christian, the Super 6. Well, we're going to do one better this week, Scott. We're going from the Super 6 of Lighthouse Christian to the Fantastic 4 from Camas County. What a remarkable story this is.
It truly is a story. Before I get into that, that could have been one of your very best transitions. Well played, my friend. Well played.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, this story is straight out of a Disney movie. In fact, they're talking about the movie rights next week. But kidding. But it's one of those things to where you hear about it and you're like, did that really just happen? And I'll be danged, it did. I mean, the gist of it: 4 female track athletes from Camas County show up, a team of 4, and they win a conference title. How do you say? Well, that's what we're going to talk to you about. It's quite an interesting little story, and boy, what a cool thing for this school. I mean, we talk about the year of the musher and all that kind of stuff that we kind of coined 2-3 years ago. And notice my kind of nickname, the quadruple lead. In mushing terminology, there's something called a double lead, and that's where you have the 2 dogs that run side by side up in front there. It's a double lead. Well, in kind of honor of the mushing, it's the quadruple lead this time for these 4 female athletes. And basically what happened was obviously the school is not very big, and they only had 4 girls on the track team. And so they got together thinking, there's no way we're going to win a conference title with 4 girls. So they sat down, did a little bit of math, and said, you know what, let's try. Let's see what we can do. But they had to get the girls completely bought into this, because what's going to happen is they're going to have all 4 of these girls do 4 events. And some of them they'd never done before. So they were like learning how to triple jump like days before the competition to compete. And I'll be danged if those 4 girls didn't kill it and just rack up the points and enough between the 4 of them that they won a conference title. And it's the first girls conference championship in any sport for Camas County since about 2014, I think. And boy, what a way to do it. And we can give some of the details, but that's the gist of the story.
It's truly remarkable. These 4 young women that ended up winning the conference. So this was the Sawtooth Conference Championships, and now they'll have the district meet that starts. It started yesterday and concludes today. I'd say they have a good shot there as well, because it's pretty much the same teams that you're going up against there also. But yeah, they scored 125 points, Scott, just edging out Hagerman by 5. So it was close. They needed every last one of those points. They beat Hagerman 125-120. And again, they did it with just 4 girls: Christine Finder, Gigi Weber, Gigi, I'm sorry, I don't know how to say your last name. We're going to say Weber and hope that we're right. But if we're not, I'm sorry, mea culpa. Gigi Weber, Hannah Swenson, and then kind of the anchor, as it were, Kenley Olson. She was, for the 2nd year in a row, Scott, the high point totaler on the girls' side at the Sawtooth Conference meet.
Yeah, and you look at what these girls were able to do. I mean, I can imagine when they pulled up to the venue, walking off the bus or getting out of the car, because they all can ride together with all their coaches and still have plenty of headroom. They walked out and they were like superimposing. It's like 4 girls. What are they going to do? Well, here's what they did. They went 1, 2, 3 in the 800 and the mile. And so they had sophomore Kenley Olson, and I'm gonna interrupt you here real quick, because we are live, and there is somebody pounding on my door.
Oh, cool! This will be fun, Scott. Go see who's at the door. All right.
Hang on. You cover me.
I'll hold down the fort for sure. So yeah, as Scott alluded to, 4 girls from Camas County end up winning the title. For comparison's sake, they beat Hagerman by 5 points. When you look at Hagerman's roster, they have 9 girls. So double the amount that Camas County is bringing to the meet. And so pretty incredible. Kenley Olson, kind of the standout. She was a triple winner. She won 3 of the 4 events that she competed in: the 100, the 200, and the triple jump. And not only that, she set new PRs in all 3 of those events too. So not only is she winning the 1, the 2, and the triple jump, but she set new PRs in all of them. And then she also took second in the 400. So Scott, first of all, who was at the door? You don't have to tell us who was at the door. That's fine.
No, it's that time of year I get up, man, and it's like I'm setting up the podcast, getting ready to rock and roll, and all of a sudden, bam, bam, bam. And it's the pest control people that are spraying borders around the house. And that was them again. I'm like, golly. Okay, so I am totally sorry. I feel like I just kind of killed the vibe.
No. You're good. Here's what I said. So Camas County with 4 athletes. Hagerman, who took second, brought 9 girls to the meet. So that's like double the amount that the Mushers brought. And then I just started getting into Kenley Olson, kind of the signature performance. Scott, she won 3 of the 4 events that she competed in, the 1, the 2, and the triple jump. And then she took only second in the 400. But I think even more incredible, Scott, is that not only did Kenley Olson win the 1, the 2, and the triple jump, but she set new PRs, new personal records in all 3 of those events also.
Wow. I mean, how impressive is that? And how exhausting is that for these girls? I mean, they had to have been completely spent, and sophomore Kenley Olson. I mean, we're going to hear about this for the next 2 years down the road. And then right on her heels was a junior, another underclassman, and that was Gigi. And I don't know if you got to her yet, but she got 2 first place finishes as well in the 800 and the mile. And second in the high jump and third in the triple. So, I mean, everything that they did got them points, right? And then you go to the senior, okay, Christine Finder. She is the one that raced almost 4 miles in total throughout the day. She got first in the 3200, second in the 800, fifth in the 400, and third in the mile. I mean, there's no field events for her. They're just going to put her on the track and just say, you just keep turning left until we tell you to stop, right? And so she did. And I mean, just the grit that you have to show to run and be effective in those 4 running events. Because, I mean, think about it. You're not in this giant track meet where you've got multiple heats of the 100, the 200, and all these things that take up time. And you go to these bigger events, depending on how they set it up, it's a pretty quick flowing meet, so the downtime and the rest time isn't quite like it is sometimes in some of these larger meets. And so here she is running almost 4 miles in a matter of, a couple of hours maybe. And then she pulls that off. And then another underclassman, Hannah Swenson, second in both the 32 and the mile, third in the 800, fourth in the triple. I mean, everything that they touched, they got points for. And it was by design. I mean, of course it was by design, but it was when the girls all sat down and we're kind of doing a little bit of math. It's like, you know what, let's commit to this. Let's do it. Let's see if we can do the unthinkable and pull this off. And they were all in, and I'll be dang. What a finish. What a story.
Yeah, you mentioned it, Scott, in the 3 long distance races, the 800, the 1600, the 3200. I'd argue the 800 now is just a full sprint for 2 laps. It used to be a distance race. I'm not sure it is anymore, but no. they go 1, 2, 3 in all 3 of those. In the 800, it's Weber, Finder, Swenson, 1, 2, 3. Then in the mile, the 1600, it's Weber, Swenson, Finder, 1, 2, 3. Then in the 3200, the 2 mile, it was Finder 1, Swenson 2. They go top 2. Scott, those were the only 2 girls that ran it. They were the only 2 in the entire meet. Nobody from any of the other schools said, yeah, we'll take on the 2 mile. Sure. And so I think those Camas girls saw an opportunity. Hey, just by finishing the race, Scott, finishing, we're going to be able to accumulate some points.
Well, and that's part of the thing that you have to look at too, is that, in the bigger meets, you're going to have like 100 different people that you're competing with. And for these girls from Camas, it was a lot about just finding the endurance and the stamina to do it. In that particular situation, yeah, just get out there and finish. And they're scoring some points. But that they're going to have a lot of entries in the 200, the 400, the triple jump, those kinds of things. And they've got to perform. And if one of them doesn't do what they did, then it might be Hagerman hoisting that trophy.
Yep. Yeah, pretty incredible stuff, Scott. And so I first saw this story on the Camas County Mushers Facebook page, which is definitely worth the follow if you are on social media, because they do such a good job of promoting athletes in every sport. And every time there's a game, here's the final score and here's the standout performers. And so I did get a picture just from their Facebook page that I was going to show up on the screen, Scott, and you can see these 4 young ladies. Here they are, the Fantastic Four. That's pretty incredible with their championship trophy.
Wow. Very cool. You can just see the exhaustion.
And Scott, I'll direct you to the comments here over to the right. Jessica Silva Weber, I'm going to guess related to Gigi. She said, that's a copy of Unbroken, the book Unbroken in Gigi's hand. How apropos. They won first in 5 of the 8 events they ran and jumped. So there's another little tidbit.
Well, how cool is that? That is something else. Huh. Wow. See, storybook, Disney, all over it.
Yep. Just a remarkable story all the way around. The Year of the Musher continue. And it's great because, Scott, we've talked about the Year of the Musher for, the last couple of years. And for the most part, it's been on the boys' side, right? Football.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Boys basketball. And, the girls' basketball team did get to state. Gosh, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago now. It was the first state tournament I did for IdahoSports.com. And I was talking to Coach Boats at the time, and he said, look, we've got like 7 girls, but really 6 because one's kind of hurt. And next year, we lose 3 of them. So I'm not sure if we're going to have a program moving forward. And they have, they tried to have a team this year and had to scrap it. And they just don't have a lot of females in the high school right now. And you see it with only 4 girls doing track and field. So for them to come together and win the first girls conference championship in over a decade, just remarkable.
I mean, it truly is. And the struggles that these small schools have to, do these kinds of things. I don't know if a lot of people just realize that when you got like 50 kids in the school, it's hard because you need to maximize a huge percentage of your population to be competitive, and you can only offer so many things. And we're seeing that we did the story with Lighthouse last week, where they have now added, baseball, which is thriving, and we'll get to that shortly. But that took away from their track team that we did the story on, and so you have these small schools that just don't have the bodies. And if one of those bodies goes down with injury or moves or whatever, I mean, sometimes that's a program killer, And so I'm always kind of, admiring a lot of these small schools. I mean, how I feel about small schools and especially we talk about, the Oakleys, Raft Rivers, and all those things. I mean, these are no different. I really admire small schools just for a lot of different reasons. And this is just another one of those.
Yep. So conference champions, the Camas County girls track and field, and they're trying to go for the district championship this weekend as well. Good luck, ladies, for sure.
Yep. Good luck.
All right, Scott, let's move on to district baseball and softball tournament action. I will share the brackets up on my screen. So those that are watching at home, these are as of last night's results. These are up to date. Everything is set in place for the most part. A couple of games still to sort a few things out, but we're going to go through the brackets on the screen. If you're listening at IdahoSports.com or wherever you download your podcasts like Stitcher, you can follow along. We have all the brackets on our homepage at IdahoSports.com, and you can follow along that way. Scott, we spent so much time last week talking about the Mountain Home baseball team and how were they going to line up the pitching. And I predicted, hey, this thing could set up for them to where they're going to challenge for one of those spots at state. I didn't think it was going to be this route, Scott, as we start with the Great Basin Conference District Baseball Tournament. Mountain Home, the 4 seed, loses right away to Burley,
Oh,
the 5
yeah.
seed, 7-2. This was like an hour after we finished taping last week. Scott.
I know. I think we were texting each other going, what have we done?
But
and then go ahead.
From the ashes, right? They get Burley again in a loser out game because your conference hasn't figured out how to cross bracket yet in loser out games. So they get Burley again in a loser out game. They win that 10-8, get some revenge. They beat Wood River last night, Scott, 10-5. I think the bigger story there is Canyon Ridge, the 3 seed, going 2-0, right? They lost to Wood River in 10 innings, 6-5, and then they lost to Wood River again, 10-3. But now it sets up Mountain Home at Twin Falls, the number 1 seed, today at Twin Falls. Winner gets to go to state. Well, how did the Bruins end up here? Well, they played Minico, the 2 seed, in the district championship game last night, and the Spartans got the Bruins 8-6. So congratulations to Minico, moving on to state. And now a very interesting battle between Twin Falls and Mountain Home. For Mountain Home, this will be their 3rd game in 3 days, Scott. Hey, if you're going to do it, you've laid out the template for what you have to do at state, right? You have to win 3 games in 3 days at state. Mountain Home trying to do the same thing here to punch their ticket.
Yeah. And, and that's the thing. It's if you can, sometimes those back-to-back games, there's a couple of ways to look at it. It could be exhausting, but it also allows you to maybe develop a little bit of rhythm, a little bit of lightning in a bottle, if you will, some momentum. And I think, nobody expected Twin to be here, but Mountain Home, they could have, they can care less who they're playing. They have 1 game to get to state, and if for some reason they're able to pull it out for the first time, and I don't know how long, the 4A baseball state tournament will be without the Twin Falls Bruins. And that's just unheard of, really. But the interesting story here is that, we talked about this last week. We talked about how Mountain Home could be the dark horse. And it's because they have enough supporting cast with the pitching. We talked about Peterson and Dallas being those 2 guys, but they have the best pitcher in the conference, one of the best in the state, in Trey Morse, right? And I was talking to some people from Mountain Home. I mean, I was tied up with other stuff, and so I didn't know who was throwing, who was whatever. But some sources from Mountain Home are telling me that Trey's available today to throw against Twin. And you talk about having your best dude on the hill in a game to go to state. Mountain Home's got that against Twin, and they've played twice already in relatively close games. Twins won them both. They won 3-2 and 9-5. So this isn't something that, Twin's going to take lightly, because Mountain Home has given them some battles, and now it is 1 game to go to state. Loser stays home. And I would love to be at that ballpark today.
Yeah, Scott. So I was looking at Mountain Home and how they threw things. They did throw Trey Morse in that district tournament opener to Burley, the game they lost 7-2. And then because of that, then they had to turn to other pitchers in the back half of the bracket. In the subsequent win over Burley, it was the combo of Hunter Dallas and Tyler Peterson. And then last night against Wood River, they rolled the dice and they threw Andrew Chapman, who you would say is probably their number 4 pitcher. And Chapman did enough and delivered. And so now you've got Morse on full rest, Scott, and ready to go, I think, for today. That's going to be very interesting to see how that shakes out.
Yeah, it certainly is. And, when you look at this team from Mountain Home, I mean, you stack up their conference, and this was the 2nd best hitting team in the conference behind Twin. And so we talk a lot about their pitching, but offensively, this is a team that is scoring almost 7 runs a game over the course of the year. And the only team better than that was Twin, who was scoring 8. So if you want to talk about, offenses, you've got the 2 best playing today in Twin and Mountain Home. And so, that's when Mountain Home just kind of flies under the radar just a little bit, because, their pitching ERA was not the best. It was, middle of the pack towards the bottom in the conference, but their offensive statistics were something that really carried them. And if you look at their run production, in this tournament. Yeah, they got shut down by Burley, but 10 runs, they're swinging the bat, and they can score. So it'll be interesting to see what Twin does with their pitching, because they've got a bevy of pitchers they can throw. And I don't know if you followed that, what they've got left.
Yeah, Scott. So the thing Twin has on their side is they only had the one game this week by virtue of being in that winner's bracket. It was last night. They threw their senior leader, Wesley Vinson, last night, and he got knocked around a little bit. And then in relief, Ketterling came in as well. So if I had to guess, Scott, just based on innings pitched this year and who lines up, Maddox Stadelmeyer, the sophomore, right? And what a spot to be in for a young sophomore on the bump.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're Twin, I mean, this is going to be a pitching masterclass potentially. If you've got Morse and Stadelmeyer on the hill, I mean, you want to talk about how dominant these two pitchers have been this season. Start with Trey Morse, Mountain Home. His ERA going into this district tournament was 0.00. With 72 strikeouts to 9 walks. He's only given up 5 hits all regular season. And so there's that guy. But then you look over at Maddox Stadelmeyer, who's perfect 6-0 on the year. With his ERA at 2.5 and, 26 Ks to 15 walks. I mean, this is going to be a really interesting battle between these two pitchers. That, man, if you are a fan of baseball and you have any idea what's going on between these two, especially when you realize what's at stake, man, this is the venue to be at tonight.
Oh, it's going to be such a fun game, Scott. And both those guys were underclassmen. Morse a junior, Stadelmeyer a sophomore, so we could see this matchup again next year potentially. Most interesting thing here, Brian, in the comments here, Scott, Morse only threw 1 inning against Twin this season, which makes it all the more interesting. Twin has not really gotten a good look at this guy, and so that also adds some intrigue to the matchup.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. That's a solid point too, because you get used to seeing a kid. You can get used to his timing. Kind of what he leads with. What his tendencies are, and you're used to his velo. This Twin team is going to see this Morse kid really for the first time. Now, don't think the Twin hasn't studied him. They don't know what he's all about, because Coach Tim Stadelmeyer over at Twin, I mean, he's as good as they get, and he'll have his kids ready. But you bet that's an interesting side note.
Yep, for sure. Yep, Twin is the perennial power. Mountain Home, the plucky upstart, trying to topple Goliath here today in Twin. We'll see if they can get it done. All right, Scott, let's go to Class 3A here, the SCIC conference. Kimberly ends up winning the district championship. They beat Gooding 8-2. Buell, the 4 seed, staying alive, Scott. They knock out number 3 Filer 9-1. Wednesday, Buell has to go to number 2 Gooding. Buell wins in a runaway 12-4. And so now you've got Kimberly advancing to state and Buell with a chance to get to state. They're going to play South Fremont in a state play-in game Saturday at Hallowell Park over in Pocatello, high noon, first pitch.
Yeah, how about that, Buell? I mean, you talk about catching lightning in a bottle. Buell coming in the 4 seed. And now they have a chance to play to get to state. South Fremont coming in with a record, I think, under 500. So, I mean, this isn't a South Fremont team that Buell can't beat, because they can. Buell's issue is always going to be, how many pitchers do they have left? I mean, we talked about, the sophomore Higley being their guy. And if they can ride him just a little bit, spread out his innings, get some good, solid relief pitching, then why not Buell?
Yeah, I'm trying to check real quick here, because Buell has really only had the one game, the 2 games this week, or actually the 1 game, right? Yeah, this tournament's pretty spread out, Scott. So really all they had was this game Wednesday night. And in that contest, let me pull up who was on the bump for them in that 12-4 win over Gooding. It was Higley. Higley threw 5 innings. Porter Higley did. And then the other Higley came in for 2. So, okay, who do you turn to here if you're Buell? Just looking at, innings on the season and performance and things like that. It looks like probably you're going to go with, I mean, because Higley was far and away the innings eater. Maybe the senior, Nemo Espinoza. There's also Jamie Ramos, the Castleford kid who plays with Buell. He could also take the bump in this state play-in game. So they've got some options, it's for sure.
Yeah, they certainly do. It's kind of, and I'm looking at the same stuff that you are here, I think. But it's going to be, I think, by committee, and they're going to have to be really careful about leaving somebody in too long, giving different looks, those kind of things. And, and they're going to have their bats going, obviously, but they're going to have a few pitchers left. I mean, they're going to have Higley available for a couple. So I don't know. We'll see how all this goes, but I mean, Buell's put themselves right where they needed to be.
Yep. And just for comparison, so you can see what South Fremont has had to do. They've had the whole week off, basically. And then yesterday, Scott, they had to win a regional play-in game against Snake River. They won that 7-3. So each team has played one game this week, throwing, in theory, their number 2 pitchers. And so we'll see. That's high noon on Saturday in Pocatello at Hallowell Park, where the 2A state tournament is going to be this year, Scott. So let's transition there. Nothing has changed. Wendell sweeps Declo. They win the first game last Saturday, 7-4. They win the second of the best of 3 series on Tuesday night, 9-3. Trojans moving on to state. And like we said, Wendell has played a lot of their 2A contemporaries that they're going to see at the state tournament. So, this could bode well for the Trojans.
No, I think so. I mean, we touched on it, last week, is there's not going to be many of these teams in this 2A tournament that have seen the amount of state qualifying teams as Wendell has. And, Wendell, they've got something special going on there too. I mean, this is a really good team that's averaging 8 runs a game and hitting about 350 on the year. But I think the important thing is they've got 3 solid pitchers. And if you want to win a state tournament, we talk about this in the upper levels, the 5As and the 4As, that, you don't get anywhere without 3 solid pitchers. And that's just kind of the reality of the situation. But you get down to these lower, younger or smaller levels, I should say, the pitching isn't as prevalent. But Wendell's got 3 dudes that can get up there and get it done. We talked about them. It's Jones, Ponce, and McRoberts. And I like Wendell in this state tournament, and I'll be there. I'm calling an audible, and we're all calling an audible. I've called 4A forever, but I'm going to go to 2A this year because it's in Pocatello, and we just needed to kind of mix things up, and I'll go. And so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's a numbers crunch. All the other tournaments are in Boise, Scott, and that's where the majority of our people live. Mm-hmm. So if we got to send somebody, we appreciate you doing that, Scott. I really think this is going to be a great tournament. Last year, Scott, the 2 semifinals were both 1-run games. One was an extra innings, and the championship was a 1-run game. So this is going to be a very evenly matched tournament, and Wendell's going to have just as good of a shot as anybody there. And then the 1A tournament, Scott, we talked about it. Lighthouse Christian won the regular season conference title, got that double bye. I had the seedings wrong. Glens Ferry actually got the number 2 seed, Scott. Last week when we showed the bracket, I think I had Idaho City there. And so Glens Ferry got that double bye, and they get to go to state. And the top 2 teams end up winning their respective matchups. And so it's Lighthouse Christian and Glens Ferry playing for the district championship today at 6:00, actually tonight in Glens Ferry. They're both moving on to state. This is just for seeding purposes. The big question, the big storyline is going to be, can somebody from the South actually beat a team from the North? The White Pine League up north, Scott, has swept the opening round the last 2 years at state, where all 4 teams from the North have just moved on to the semifinals. It's kind of looking that way again this year. Can either one of these 2 teams step up and provide some interference? That will be the big storyline at the 1A state tournament.
Yeah, for sure. It's just been dominated by the North, and I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I mean, Lighthouse has had a great year. Glens Ferry, not too bad either, but that's a tough ask to take over what the North has been able to do.
Scott, I'll dive into this more on our state baseball preview show on Monday, but do you know the last year that a team from the South, District 3, won the state baseball championship in 1A?
1823.
Right? Not that far off. It was 1998, Scott.
Oh, wow. That's been a hot minute. And that's 6 years of domination, or 25, going on 26 years of domination by the North.
Yeah, and it is it's in a lot of years it's an all North final. Like just getting a team to the championship is, and now Glens Ferry will tell you, hey, for 2/3 of that run, we were at the 2A level and winning championships and stuff, right? So Glens Ferry is kind of the newcomer to 1A baseball, but we'll see. Congratulations though to Lighthouse and Glens Ferry playing for the district title tonight in Glens Ferry. All right, Scott, let's go softball now. Last night, Twin Falls, the number 1 seed, wins the district title over Wood River 17-0. So Wood River's got to turn around now, and they'll host Burley, the 4 seed, today in the 3rd place game. The winner of that will move on to state as well. Burley eliminated Jerome last night 7-4. This was a fun tournament. I mean, Burley barely held on to beat Canyon Ridge 9-8 in a loser-out game, and hey, if you can just find a way to advance, sometimes it doesn't matter how you win. And now Burley's got a shot to deny Wood River a trip to state for the 2nd year in a row.
Yeah. First of all, what a great job by the girls from Burley last night. They had some really solid performances, especially on the hill. Haley Vaughn and Cambry Beck and that whole crew just did a really good job of keeping the Jerome hitters at bay, off balance, and not allowing a rhythm to get started. Too many runners left on base for Jerome. I mean, they had the bases loaded in the bottom of the 7th inning with nobody out, and got one in, and they just couldn't get that hit. And the game ended on a runner's interference call. With 2 down, there was a slow roller to the short, and the girl the runner on second runs into the shortstop as they're both kind of in the way, and that's interference. That's an out. Game over. And who knows if the play would have been made, but that's how it ended. It was a kind of a heartbreaking loss for the Tigers, but Burley, you know what, they did enough, and they played well, and they manufactured a run that was really impressive too. And those little things make all the difference. Now on the other side, I mean, Twin is steamrolling, and they have got so many pieces that is going to be a really interesting tournament for the Lady Bruins. I mean, 17-0, and that one's called after 3 innings. I mean, this one, you barely get your popcorn and the game's over. And Twin just kind of flexed their muscle, and I don't know. It's going to be an interesting game tonight between Wood River and Burley. Is Wood River kind of licking their wounds, or did that happen so fast that it didn't even register with them? And Burley definitely has some momentum. A road win at Jerome, and now they get to travel all the way up to Wood River. And again, they split the season series in 2 close games. Wood River won 11-9, and Burley won 12-10. So, I mean, anybody's game up there. That'll be a good one as well.
And they played those games, Scott, at the College of Southern Idaho, CSI, in Twin in the regular season. Wood River says, no chance that's happening this time. You got to come up to our place. That's how we're going to have the home field advantage. So that's correct. That was on neutral field. So we'll see if this matters up there at all or not, but I don't think it will for Burley. I mean, you already traveled and won on the road. Why can't you do it again? Right. And for Twin, I think they're going to be right in the mix for the 4A state title because they haven't played a lot of teams they're going to see at state, right? Their conference was pretty full with Great Basin opponents because it's such a ginormous league. But They were able to sneak in a doubleheader with Pocatello, the runner-up from a year ago. And last year at the 4A state softball tournament, Pocatello actually was in the driver's seat. Skyview had to beat Pokey twice on Saturday. Skyview came back through the other side and did it. They knocked off Pokey twice last year. So you're talking about a team that almost won the championship last year and has almost everybody back from that team. Pokey did sweep Twin in that doubleheader, but each game was tight. 7-4, 6-3, a pair of 3-run losses. So I think Twin, and that was, at the start of April. So they've gotten a lot better since then too. So.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at this 4A bracket in softball, why not Twin? Just because they have as much firepower and pitching as Bishop Kelly and Pocatello. Emmett's in there too. Hillcrest is one of those teams to keep an eye on. But why not Twin? I think this softball tournament could go many different ways, and it'll be a fun one to watch. If you're heading to watch 4A softball.
Yep. Speaking of teams needing to win twice to claim the title, that is what Kimberly did at the 3A SCIC tournament, Scott, where Kimberly and Gooding 1 versus 3 played in that undefeated game last Friday, that undefeated semifinal. Gooding got the win 3-1. That sent Kimberly to the back half of the bracket where they had to fight to keep their season alive. They knock out Filer, the 4 seed. Buell, the 2 seed, goes 2-out. They beat Filer 16-6 on Wednesday night, and then they got to come back through and play Gooding. And this was right after. So Wednesday at 4:00, they beat Filer. Then right away, they had to take the field against Gooding. They win that game 17-5 to set up the winner-take-all game 7 of the tournament last night in Kimberly. And Kimberly got the win 9-5. So the Bulldogs do it the hard way, but they are the district champs. And now Gooding will play South Fremont in a state play-in game Saturday in Burley, 1:00 first pitch.
I look at this, and that might have been the best thing to happen to Kimberly. You look at this Bulldog team who has just really cruised this year, to a 17-4 regular season record, riding Addie Clark, who's, just swinging it well and pitching it well. And, Mallory Kelsey, that's a great 1-2 punch. I mean, these girls have been dominating. And that loss to Gooding might have woken them up just a little bit to where they're like, hey, we're not impervious. We can be beaten if we don't dial it in. And sometimes a loss like that is exactly what a team needs. And you see how they responded. I mean, they annihilated Filer. They blasted Gooding, and then they beat them again. And so I'm thinking for Kimberly, that's what you needed.
Yep. And looking ahead to state, teams they've played, they did play Homedale, the District 3 champ, twice at the very start of the season and split. They played the District 5 champ, Marsh Valley, and split as well. So this is a battle-tested Kimberly team, and they will be in the mix certainly at state. But the last several years, District 3 has kind of owned the 3A classification in softball.
They have. And, you look at Kimberly, who's been kind of the number 1 ranked team in the 3A softball classification, playing a couple of loser out games to even get there. And that's why I'm thinking, when you're ranked number 1, you're cruising, and now you have to face a little adversity. I tell you what, I think that bodes well for the Bulldogs.
Yep. Okay, let's move on to 2A softball, Scott. This best of 3 series, we've got intrigue. Wendell went to Declo and stole the first game on Monday, 16-13. So Wendell then got to host game 2. Well, Declo says, we'll return the favor. We'll come to your place. They win 14-3. So now it reverts back to Declo tonight, Scott, 4:00, game 3, winner take all for the district championship. Now you might think the journey's over from there. It's not. Whoever wins that district championship, Scott, is going to have to play Soda Springs, the second place team from District 5, in a state play-in game Saturday at 1:00 at OK Ward Park in Pocatello. I got to tell you, Scott, I don't know if it matters who gets through here, Declo or Wendell. I think they win this game over Soda to get to state.
Oh, I totally believe that too. These are two really good teams. I mean, record-wise, right around 500-ish for Wendell. Declo 9-6, and Declo has taken 2 out of 3 in the regular season, but there's still 2 really good teams. I mean, Wendell, led by Ainsley Clark and Brianna Comstock, and Declo by the Nebekers. They've got some players, both of these teams do. And I agree with you. Whoever loses this game, I don't see them losing to Soda unless they absolutely have a collapse of some kind, because they're still pretty dang good.
Yeah, I mean, I think Declo probably wins this game in the district championship, and then that would put Declo against Soda. They did play once this year, and Declo won 6-5. Scott, you may remember very early on in April, we talked about this Declo team and how they had a knack for getting these crazy walk-offs, and they had a walk-off home run by, I believe it was Nebeker. It was against Soda Springs. That was the game that we talked about right here on the Prepcast. So it all kind of comes full circle in a way. So
very cool. Yeah. So who knows, might be another repeat of that again. But and if they get and they get together like that, 2 teams have seen each other already. They've seen the pitching. It kind of evens the field just a little bit. But I do like both Wendell and Declo to advance.
Yep. We'll see what happens starting tonight in Declo. All right. And then 1A, Scott, District 3. This tournament was not seeded when we last did the show. So here's what it looked like, because this is just a 2-day sprint. Thursday, Friday. That's it. 2-day tournament at the Gals Fields over in Caldwell, and then we're done. So Glens Ferry did get the number 1 seed pretty convincingly. They get the double bye. Now, it's not like baseball where if you make the Final Four, you're automatically in. Only the top 3 finishers advance to state via auto bids. A 4th bid is available, so they take 3 from the north, 3 from the south, and then 2 at-large bids via Max Prep's ranking. If Glens Ferry were to lose, I don't think they are. But if they did, their Max Prep's ranking is so high that they would get in regardless.
Right.
So that's the story. Is Glens Ferry's going to play Greenleaf Friends today at high noon? I think Greenleaf is kind of a sneaky team. They obviously had no problems with Vision Charter. They won 22-10 yesterday, but Glens Ferry is the one team from this district that I think could break up that monopoly that the North has had, because it's kind of been like in baseball. The North has really dominated this thing, except for Glens Ferry did win the title a couple years ago, and I think the Pilots have just as good of a shot again this year.
Yeah, they do. I mean, this is a Glens Ferry team that put together an impressive 16-6 record over the course of the regular season without losing a conference game. The only thing that might work against them is the fact that they weren't really challenged in their conference, and so what do when they get those teams from the North that are just that much better than what they've been playing? Because I mean, you look up and down this Glens Ferry, season, so many blowouts. We're talking 26-0, 22-0, 32-0, 21-0, 12-0, 15-1, 25-1, 23-0, 19-1. I mean, you get those kind of games and you don't get the challenge that you need. And that's what I worry about with this Glens Ferry team. They're good, don't get me wrong, but have they been challenged enough to deal with the North?
Now, they did play some teams from the North this year. Ironically enough, though, they were 2A teams, Orofino and Grangeville, which are both going to the 2A state tournament. They played them at their Glens Ferry tournament. They beat Orofino 7-3, lost to Grangeville 9-5. So I think they did the best that they could, given this conference is big, Scott. There's 7 teams in it, and you're supposed to play everybody twice. That didn't really end up happening this year for some teams, which made the standings kind of wonky, but so that takes up such a big part of your schedule. And they pretty much played 2A teams outside of their conference to try and prepare. So we will see. True. Good luck to the Pilots. And how about this, Scott? Head softball coach from Glens Ferry, Frank Case. Good morning, guys. We're heading to Gals Field right now. So they're on the way to Caldwell.
All right. Well, best of luck, and thanks for tuning in on the bus. I mean, we've got a really good relationship with this Glens Ferry softball team, and talking about kind of their their season. And I wish them the best of luck. And you look at you look at the rankings in that classification. You can put as much stock in the rankings as you want, but Glens Ferry's the only team, south of Canada, I think, that's in the top 5. If that tells you something, about how strong that North is. And so are they going to have enough? And so, I don't know. And if you're Coach Case, you use that as locker room material. It's like, we're it, man. This is it. They don't own us. We're tired of being second place in the North. And you can use it, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's good motivation for sure. Glens Ferry did win the state softball title in the
Not
years
too long ago.
Yeah, let me look here. I'm gonna look at 2021, so
Right.
2 years ago, Scott.
Yeah.
Or 3 years ago, I guess. But otherwise, it's been a steady diet of North teams have won 4 of the last 5 championships. So
Yep.
Glens Ferry, the fly in the ointment, as it were, to the party up north. So
Yep, very good. Well said.
all right. Well, that'll do it for this edition of the Magic Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com. Next week, in place of the Magic Valley Prepcast, we'll do our annual state baseball tournament preview special. That'll be Monday night, 7 o'clock, live on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and Twitter account. We'll break down all the state baseball brackets because, once again, IdahoSports.com will be broadcasting every pitch from 5A to 1A, totally live, totally free. You can watch all of the state baseball tournaments right here on IdahoSports.com. So our live state preview special, Monday night, 7 o'clock. And then in 2 weeks, Scott, we will come back for the big one, all recapping all of these spring sports championships and who did what from the Magic Valley. And so rest up. All right.
Yeah. That's when we actually get to take a breath. And by that time, it'll be graduation week for everybody. And then we just kind of cruise right into summer. And when we get into summer, we're not going to have all these brackets to go over. So, if you're out there and you hear about these human interest stories and things like we talked about today, even in our athletes having, these personal things that are going on that highlight, them, hey, let us know. Summer's a great time to cover those things. And we love deep diving into that stuff.
Definitely. You can always send us an email, Brandon@IdahoSports.com or Scott@IdahoSports.com. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, to the Magic Valley Prepcast. Enjoy the remaining district competition. Hopefully your team makes it to state. Drive safe wherever you're going this weekend. And we will see you back here in 2 weeks for another edition of the Magic Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.